All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for your patience there with a few technical issues. We're very excited for this virtual parent coffee. It's the first of 3 virtual parent coffees shared by the Forest School and the Forest School online. I know most everybody. If there's a few folks I haven't met yet, I'm Tyler Thigpen, head of schools, based here south of Atlanta, and excited to dive into this topic. We're talking about character formation and how we might, as parents, rear beautiful humans. And then also we're going to separate out at the end, after our discussion, and FSO, Forest School Online, is going to go with Max and share some updates and have a discussion. And then the Forest School in person is going to stay with me and Amber and have a discussion as well. So with that having been said, I want to turn it over to Dr. Caleb Collier, who is not just a friend, but one of the founding guides at the Forest Schools. And he is now the head of research at our Institute for Self-Directed Learning. And if you don't know, our nonprofit organization kind of has 3 arms. One is the Forest School, another is the Forest School Online, and the third is an institute where we partner with public schools, districts, and charter networks around the United States and around the world to move towards learner-driven models. And what's great about that for us as a school is the work that we're doing at the Institute, the research and the consulting. We have a chance to learn very quickly and to implement new strategies and new techniques at the Forest School Online and at the Forest School. And then we also, based on research, we get to try things out at our schools and see what works and what doesn't. And that then informs the consulting and the research that we do through the Institute. So it's sort of this learning loop, this learning cycle that I, as a kind of being the dork that I am, I sort of love the accelerated learning that happens as a result. But Caleb is really the one who is shouldering the leadership of the Institute at the moment. And it's done a lot of work, both for his PhD in self-directed learning, as well as some postdoc work in character formation at the University of Virginia. And so I'm excited for him to guide us through a conversation around character formation and self-directed learning, and then talk very concretely about what we as parents can do at home to help our children develop strong character and become independent learners. So with that having been said, Caleb, I'll turn it over to you and just guide me through the deck, Caleb.
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, you can go ahead and advance it. Really thankful to be here. Thank you all for carving out time during your lunch break or your busy days to take time and sit. Character formation for us isn't just an add-on to what we do. It's kind of how we think about even our reason for existence. So you can go ahead and move to the next slide. We have this kind of big hope. One, it's on the individual, right? We want to create a school so that each and every individual learner, hero at our school flourishes as a human. We want them to receive or take steps towards their full potential as a human. But it doesn't end there. Our goal is that these flourishing humans would then go out into the world and create something beautiful, right? That together, we can have this long-term view of education. It's not just about what we do at the school, or even what we do doesn't end when our learners graduate or when they leave our school, but it extends beyond. So our hope is that we can design education in such a way that we are cultivating flourishing people on the individual level, who are super at tune with themselves, with their strengths, with their calling, but they're also getting those skills at learning to live together and push for a flourishing society. So that's a lofty goal, but that's what we shoot for, imperfectly. But that kind of encapsulates some of when we think about character formation. It's not an add-on; it's at the heart of what we do. You can go ahead and move it forward, Tyler. Part of this too, we at the Forest School, it's a learner-led environment. We're a self-directed learning school, so you might see that term SDL or self-directed learning pop up. And the term itself, the phrase itself, has been around for decades. And this is kind of the most well-known and established definition. It was created by a guy named Malcolm Knowles, who worked mostly in the field of adult education in the 1970s. So he wrote some books titled Self-Directed Learning, and really pushed for kind of this process-oriented idea. And his definition, I'm not going to read it all here, but it was very focused on how an individual learns, right? So an individual figures out what they want to learn, how they're going to learn it, the kind of the process or steps they're going to go through, and how they're going to be evaluated. So a lot of schools that practice self-directed learning, this is what they mean when they say the phrase, when they use the term. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we have a couple of critiques, and Tyler, you can go ahead and move it forward. Two of them mainly. One is that there's this overemphasis on the individual, right? There's not much of emphasis put on the collective, on the community, what we're doing together. And it's also, it's not concerned with the holistic growth of the person. It's kind of value neutral. This definition is just about a process of learning that's removed from the content of what we're learning, right? So I could use self-directed learning in this sense to teach myself math, or to be a woodworker, or to rob banks, right? Like it's there's no like value of why I'm learning the thing, right? So those are two of our big critiques. It's individualistic and it's value neutral. We want more than that. So we created our own definition at the Institute through lots of feedback loops and rhythms. And this is how we think of self-directed learning as employed at the School and the School Online. So self-directed learning is when learners, in the context of an interdependent community of peers, trained educators, and caring adults, choose the process, content, skills, learning pathways, and outcomes of learning with the guidance, accountability, and support of others in service of finding a calling that will change their communities and the world. So a lot of what Knowles was getting at in the 70s is there's still individuals choosing their learning pathways, but it's couched. It's in a context of a community, both of friends here, guides here, but also adults at home, which is why moments like this, these parent coffees are so important, because this is group effort. And it's also, so it's in a community and it's not value neutral. It's about a larger thing. It's about finding a calling that's going to change the world. So that for us is how we define self-directed learning and how we see it enacted in our spaces. And that shows up, you can see, every year we have kind of an overarching question of the year. And this year's, you've probably seen this a time or two in a blog post or a parent coffee, right? So if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, then when? And that's Rabbi Hillel, who was a religious leader 2,000 years ago, kind of giving sage advice on thinking for myself. Yeah, I need to be included, but also why and who else am I thinking about and what am I doing? We kind of, you can click again, Tyler. We use the terminology of the story of me, the story of us, and the story of now. You may have heard Tyler mentioned that before. These are the sorts of conversations we're having at school, and as an overarching question, we're coming back to this all year. Like I'm at the school now, it's posted on all the studios. There's conversation happening daily kind of around these themes. And we see that as directly tied to our definition of self-directed learning and to the idea of character formation. Okay, on the next slide, here's where I'm gonna invite y'all to just drop into the chat. We won't have a lot of conversation about this, but what do you think is most influential? All of these things play some role in shaping the character of young people, but what do you think is most influential in shaping the character of our students? Is it kind of parents, family structures? Is it the school? Is it religious traditions, institutions? Is it instead friends or peers or media? I've grouped all media together. You could very easily kind of dissect that into categories. Let's hear else. Family, parents. Yeah, I see a trend. A trend is forming. Family, parents. Depends on the child. Yeah, that's maybe not as simple as one or the other. I've asked this question in workshops with adults and with changes over time. That's an interesting response, Amber. I've led this conversation with adults and with kids, and adults will typically say family and parents. I think partly because we see the value of that, and we've been able to think long term about maybe the impacts of our own family and own parents. When I ask kids, you know what they say? It's usually friends. It's usually peers, because that's immediate to them as kind of who's shaping me right now. But it's not just one thing. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. This is why we refer to this in research space as a moral ecology. So part of my work right now, I am a postdoc fellow at the University of Virginia. At UVA, they have an Institute for Advanced Studies in Culture. And there they are studying this thing called moral ecology. They have an ongoing moral ecology project. And it's headed up by a man named James Davidson Hunter. And this is how he defines moral ecology, right? So no child grows up isolated from the world, but instead is embedded in a complex array of relationships, institutions, and circumstances. And clearly the sum and substance of any human being, not least a child, is more than what goes on in their brains. Individual human beings are constituted emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually in a dialectic with the communities and environments of which they are a part. Right. So when we're talking about kids growing up and what's impacting them, it's everything. Right. It's complex. And a lot of you kind of mentioned that complexity in your answers. It's not just one thing. It might depend a lot on that child. It might depend a lot on that situation, and it changes over time. So as we're thinking about moral ecology, we're not just thinking about parenting, and we're not just thinking about education. We're trying to map out kind of a broader sense of all of the things that are leaving their fingerprints on our children, and how we can think about that and work more in concert together towards the ends we want to see. Tyler, you can move to the next slide. So at UVA, they have this framework, and it's helpful. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because this is more for the research and less discussion focused. But they're looking at kind of 4 levels of ecology, and maybe the best way to see these levels. I'm going to come back to this frame, but Tyler, will you advance at 1? Is thinking through these as embedded. So for starters, the innermost circle, there's the person, right? I think this visual is a little cleaner and maybe kind of easier to follow than the previous one. So the person's at the middle, right? What is that person doing, thinking, acting, behaving? That's the character, right? The character is kind of actualized in a person, but that person's embedded. And for our context, we're interested as a school community. So that person's embedded in a school community. And as a school community, we are doing things to impart, to transmit, to cultivate character in that person. So that school community is going to include parents because we're doing this together. All of us are operating within various moral traditions, and those moral traditions, here you see it's plural. In the previous slide, it was singular. That's one thing we've made is there's a plurality of sources that we're pulling from when we're thinking of this. So some families on this call are going to be coming from kind of various religious aspects of morality. Others may be coming from human rights traditions, democratic traditions, various humanistic philosophical traditions. But the kids are embedded within the school. The school's embedded within a community of all of us. And we're all going to be thinking about morality. And then that's embedded even further in social contexts, right? So where we live, when we live, who we're around, the larger conversations that are happening beyond us. So that's kind of the embedded nature of the framework. You can advance it to the next one, Tyler, and then click again, and it'll zero in. So what we're going to focus on here, at UVA, we've built we're iterating on an instrument that kind of maps out all of these: the person level, the organization level, which is the school, the tradition level, and then the social context level. For our purpose, I think zeroing in on this person level is probably the most applicable. This is the practical. What's the person doing? What's the individual? What's the kid doing? Click again, Tyler, and this will be a visual that shows how we were thinking about this. So basically, the structure of character on like a person level is a we use the image of a triangle, but there might be better shapes. There's 3 kind of aspects of it. The first is what we call the know, or setting boundaries. The first step of what we might call character or morality is the boundaries you set for yourself, the things you say I'm not going to do. At schools, this is where we often stop as teachers or as school leaders, is saying, okay, here's what you can't do. Maybe sometimes we do that as parents too. That the no's are easier to set. And if you have kids that are really good with the no's, you have in a school setting, you have compliant learners, but they aren't necessarily character-filled learners. You need these other two components. The second is the yes, seeing beyond myself. So, after you kind of created your boundaries and thinking through the things you're saying no to, what is it beyond you that has value, right? What is it you're ascribing to? What greater good? Our overarching question last year was, why be good? Why do good? It's much easier in the world to not be good, right? Sometimes it's easier to take a path of less goodness. But the yes, the why needs to be compelling to say, okay, this is why I want to make the choices or do the hard things or build the habits of goodness. And there are a variety of, this is a cause or creed. This could be, again, a religion or a philosophy or a worldview that encompasses not just me, but others. It could be about ecology, could be about taking care of, the earth and other things. But those two components in and of themselves are still incomplete. The third one is where we kind of intersect, I think, with self-directed learning, which is the here I am, or really seeing the individual as being responsible. It's on the individual's shoulders. Say, my character is my responsibility. I am in charge of the things I do and say, no one else, right? So those three components are really kind of provide the framework or the visual for that person piece of character. This is where it starts. What are the things we're saying no to? What are the things we're saying yes to? How are we taking responsibility for our own thoughts and actions and beliefs? And that's what we'll have time at the end of this just to kind of brainstorm that together. How can we help our kids in these spaces? Tyler, you want to move to the next one? We're going to look at 3 questions. So with the University of Virginia team, we built a survey that had over 60 questions, but we're going to look at 3 of them today. And as we go through these, I'm going to ask 2 questions to you. And one is just, what do you notice? And what does it make you think? So those 2 questions I want to be on the front of your mind. What do you notice? What does it make you think? We're going to look at 3 data sets. And then we'll come back at the end and do a little more kind of group discussion. But what do you notice? What does it make you think? I'll invite you. You're welcome to hop off mute and to verbalize as we're looking at these. But the first question is, who do we want our kids to be? So Tyler, you can share the data. And I'm going to kind of give a voiceover to what you're looking at here, because it can be overwhelming. So the question is, thinking about your hopes for your own future, please note how important it is that your children or students become each of the following as an adult. This data is presented as a heat map. So what that means is the darker green is going to be the higher responses. The lighter green is going to be the less populated responses. So you can kind of flow visually and see where the responses are. In the written report, this was 2 pages. So this is why it's kind of divided in 2 frames here. So the way you read it is from the left to the right, from the left top to bottom, then move to the right. And at the right, those same headers would be there. So from not at all important to absolutely on the left hand to absolutely essential on the right hand is kind of how you would navigate both of those charts. I'm going to give you a second just to look at this. I know it's a lot of information, but just what do you notice? What does it make you think? Or is the invitation? And feel free to, when you have a wondering or a thought, you can drop it in the chat or come off the mic. Oh, it may be helpful context. This is for school data. We did a survey in the spring, so around April, May. We had about 50 participants. You can see here, 48 of them answered this question. So this is a collection of 4 school staff, 4 school family members, and then just community members in the wider area. So what is this? What do you notice? What does it make you think?
Just right off the bat, it seems like the things that are traditionally important, I think culturally in America, it seems that the kids here don't necessarily see them as important, like
Say
college,
more.
college education, knowing about my country. I mean, I don't know, historically in America, it's very important for Americans to know some a type of history of their country. You know, we're very patriotic, and and um, college educated, graduated of a highly rated university. Like, these are things in my experience growing up that were supposed to be very important. But it seems that based on how these children are shaped and in their learning, they believe that these things actually aren't as important, to be a well-rounded, flourishing, thriving, whole human.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. That's a good observation. And so these, just for clarification, these are actually answered by parents. So this isn't the data from kids. These are parents.
Oh, sorry.
But I think your point stands. Like, maybe some things that are traditionally important, that parents saw for their kids, like getting into a college, like an elite college, maybe that's less important now. But thank you for sharing. Go ahead.
Caleb, I sort of, I guess looking over, I noticed that it seemed like the answers that were, that it was more important, I guess, how we interact with others. So that we're sort of, helping others and what we're doing for community. And then sort of on the lower side, it seems like things like how we're viewed by society. So things like being famous or being seem to rank a lot lower. So it seems like definitely be more outward into community as opposed to how we're viewed by community.
Yeah, I think that that jives kind of with the other responses I see here from Tyler too, and Darlene. Family ties, volunteering. There's this moral character piece. It's there is kind of in the data seems to be more of a leaning towards what are we doing for others, how we're doing it, less about individual success or achievement or some of those other metrics. Any other notices or wonderings?
It seems that a lot of these that have high marks are quite subjective, and it would be hard to capture empirically. A lot of it just seems very more on the fuzzy end and less on the things that you could really capture and measure in a way divorced from opinion and context.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think these are framed as aspirations. What aspirations do you have for your kids, like who they are in the future? So that is like, right, how can you measure someone that's loving or forgiveness? All right, those get tricky. But yeah, so asking parents basically, like looking at this list, like how important it is to you that your kids have these qualities that you can recognize in them, I guess. Yeah, and Tyler's comment says, that's a real challenge. How do you measure that? There's a lot of, in the character education space, there's a lot of debate around how do you measure character? How do you measure kindness? How do you measure empathy? Yeah, and so this moves us to the next one. How do our kids spend their time? You can go ahead and advance to this data set. Again, the same questions. What do you notice? What does it make you wonder? Here's less data, and there's some things missing. As I kind of went through this data, one of the things I noticed is there's not really a spot there for faith-based activities or other things like that. So I think we're missing some things. But what do you notice kind of about this? So again, these are parents. So parents are answering this. How are your children spending their time on a day? What do you notice? Tyler said he doesn't believe the screen time responses. We did this. There were 2 other schools in this pilot round that we did, and the 4th school answers on screen time were on average like 20% lower, I think, than the other schools. So I think you might be onto something.
I think this is definitely a group of entrepreneurs working for pay. No.
Yeah, maybe that's some of the high school parents or something, you know. We do have a few that have some after school jobs. Anything else you see or notice? Again, you know, there's a lot of this data speaks for itself. Anything jump out at you on how our community is seeing how their children are spending their time? All right, Tyler, you can move to the next one. All right, what responsibility do our kids have to others? So this is going to be the last kind of set of data we look at. So again, this is asking parents, and the question, I'll read it. What responsibilities toward others, if any, do you think students have as future participants in American democracy? So this is looking at the future, right? So like right now, you know, our kids aren't able to vote and that kind of thing. But this is thinking like as we're kind of raising our kids, what do you think responsibility they have to fulfill as future participants in democracy? So what do you notice? What does it make you think? And you can see kind of between the question and the graph, there's a little bit of description where we kind of identified that the top 3 were treating all people equally, voting in national elections, and showing respect to groups who are different than you. So curious if y'all have any reactions to those top 3 or would have different ones.
I would think part of the issue with our society as it is now, or our country, is that treating all people and showing respect should be 100%. And
yes,
that's
one thing you're noticing, yeah, is that there are people, you know, the respondents, and a couple of caveats too. I think your point is well taken. As an incentive for this survey was like an hour-long survey that we did, and we offered like $20 gift cards for participants. So I'm sure some people just kind of click through without really reading questions, is my interpretation on some of this data. But I do think you're also right, you know, in wondering, you know, who would say it doesn't really matter to some of these things, you know. We're not a responsibility, so that's a good wondering. Darlene, you said it's kind of hard to do the things that got higher scores with some of the things that got lower scores. Oh, can you say what you mean by that?
Well, actually, like if you're trying to vote or treat people equally or show respect to groups that are different than your own, then you might need to participate in activities in your community or become fully informed or learn about history, that kind of stuff. Like,
so
you can't do those things without knowing about those things. So they're kind of, one comes from the other, in my opinion.
Yeah, so these are kind of interconnected things. Some of them will be kind of dependent on doing the others. Okay, any other thoughts before we kind of lead to our kind of wrap up?
I would just say that the question on keeping fully informed about news and public issues is a tricky one as well, given the censorship we're experiencing today and the veracity of what is being disclosed in the news.
And what does it mean to be fully informed, right? Like, I think you're going to have various
Exactly.
people are going to say, I'm informed and the other group isn't, based on your news media intake and that sort of thing. Yeah, a lot of these are tricky to nail down. Okay, you can go ahead and move to the next one, Tyler. This is going to be our wrap up. So again, these are, the data, it's a lot of data and it's complex data. It's not easy to simplify, but it's getting at broadly kind of who do we want our kids to be? How do we want them to be spending their time? What do we want them to be, like what responsibilities do we kind of envision them having? So here's kind of some three, I guess, wondering, like, these are action steps, basically, a what now of how to kind of think through from here to go into talking or, engaging with your kids about character. But I also want this to be, we only have a couple minutes, but to be, a time to share strategies. So the three action steps are, help your kids set boundaries. Like, what are they getting regular practice at saying no to? So they're the ones saying no. It's not like you're not saying no to them. Like, what are they getting practice saying no to? And how do you model that yourselves? What are you saying no to? What do your kids see you saying no to? The second is cultivating practices for your kids to see beyond themselves. So which greater causes are they saying yes to? And what are you modeling for them? Like, what kind of greater causes are you giving time or attention to? And the third is fostering personal responsibility. So giving your kids space to take ownership of their words, thoughts, and actions, and to shoulder the consequences. So they're doing it, they're shouldering the consequences by saying, here I am. And how do you model that yourself? So I want you to think about that. If anybody has any strategies or anything they want to share and drop, we're getting ready to split and breakout rooms with for school and online and in person in different rooms. But and those will be other conversations. But if you wanted to share anything before we broke, just in the chat about a strategy that's been working with you. And then Tyler, I'm just going to hand it over to you to kind of guide us logistically from here on out.
Great. Yeah, would love to hear comments or questions or ideas that we can shamelessly steal before we go into the breakout rooms. But what does this bring up for y'all?
I know for us in our household, the way we try to make sure that we are treating people equally and showing respect for all people, I think it first comes with your mindset. And if you first think about how you would want to be treated, or you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, it makes it a lot easier, whether or not you know the history, whether or not you're familiar with the groups, whether or not you are a part of different organizations. I think it first comes to, how would I want to be treated if I was in that situation? And just treat the person how you would like to be treated. So that's the type of strategy. I think that's as simple as we can get, as we can get, that we try to instill in our children in their day-to-day living.
I got thrown by the first one, the no, and I was thinking, what came to mind for me was that, sometimes our kids are really good at saying no to things you think they should say yes to. And that's sort of like, both respecting that, but then also sometimes pushing on it a little bit. And that, when you think that there's some experience that they should really be going out of their comfort zone a little bit and trying to push on, but they're pretty set that it's a no. And so that sort of dichotomy right there struck me.
And I think that them not just saying no, but coming up with a solution to debate with you is different than just saying no, but saying, hey, this is what I would like to do, and this is why. And that's still saying no, but it just doesn't sound like no. It just sounds like, this will make me do this better, or maybe I don't do it right now, but I do it in 5 minutes. It's still saying no to right now, but it's just giving an explanation or an argument or suggestion of why I'm saying no. And this is, maybe we could just negotiate. So not just saying no, but coming up with some type of solution behind it.
Those are great points. I'd also just add, like, what we know from our experience and from research too, is that our self-efficacy, so like what we believe that we're capable of, that can change over time. And that changes for kids. So like for a hot minute, they'll believe that they can do something, but later on find out they can't, and vice versa. And then also like what we think will happen if we do something or don't do something, that our understanding of that changes over time as well. And so when we encounter at the school, and when I as a father encounter with my 4 kids, no, and I wonder, Don, to your point, if they are just kind of, their own thinking is getting in their way, I encourage them, like, well, that's a great theory. How could you prove that? Well, how could you test that hypothesis and find out if your conclusion is right, and invite them to experiment and play with it. And then just ask them over and over again, like, what are you capable of? What do you think you can do here? And if you do that, what do you think will happen? And don't judge their answers, but just keep asking them the question, trusting that in the long term, they're going to develop, and they're going to, their self-efficacy is going to grow, and their understanding of, what really will happen is going to develop as well. What other thoughts, questions, or ideas do y'all have before we break out into, separate schools, based on this idea of the no, the yes, and the here I am? I could share another quick example. Here at the school, I was in our middle school studio today, present with the learners, and I didn't use this triangle, but we did the no, yes, and here I am. One of the things that our in-person environment we do is we are all responsible for, cleaning up the physical environment, the facilities, the studio together at the end of the day. And sometimes learners do their role and their part, and sometimes they don't. And, there's a council or a leadership entity that's meant to like hold, the rest of the studio accountable. And one of the things that today in our conversation we made very clear is that there's no retaliation. No one, if somebody gets called out or held accountable, you can't be mean, you can't respond or react in a mean way and retaliate just because you're getting called out and held accountable. That's the no. The yes is, well, how do we create an appeals process that's fair? If you think you're actually doing your role really well, but the council disagrees, what's a way that you can appeal that decision or that accountability or that judgment? And then the here I am is like, okay, who's going to sign up to recommend what that appeals process looks and feels like? And then who's going to give input, who's going to create it, who's going to agree to it, in the end. So that's one of the ways we've applied this at school. Any other thoughts before we go into breakout rooms? Will y'all please join me in thanking Dr. Collier for sharing this research.
Thank you.
We're going to make this Zoom recording available in perpetuity if your partner or wants to view it, or even your learner, or if you want to refer to it later, we'll share that with you. But what I'd love to do is I'm going to send Forest School in-person folks to a breakout room with me and Amber and Brittany. And then Caleb and Max are going to stay in here with Forest School online folks. And Max, if I got any folks wrong, do you mind just kind of sending them to the breakout room, accordingly? And then sounds good. And then you and I'll be in touch via text. I think what we'll do on our end is just kind of end our end, and then you guys can go as long as you need to. All right. Forest School Online folks, great to see y'all. Enjoy your chat with Max and one another.
All right, I think we can begin the Forest School Online portion. So can everybody hear me? Awesome, cool. It's great to see you all. Thanks for being here. I really wanted us to just take some time to debrief together and use this as a space to come together as the parents and the families for the Forest School Online. Whether you want to continue debriefing the work that Caleb shared, he's here with us and we'll happily be able to go into more detail there. Or if there are any other things that you'd like to bring up and just discuss as a community of parents. So I know we're towards the end of the year. Next week is the last week of the school session, and then we'll reconvene in January. So things are kind of coming to an end for this session quicker than we think. It's a fast one. There's only 3 weeks. So we wanted to take this time to connect as a school and just make sure that we're able to talk about the things that are on your minds. We got about 15 minutes, so plenty of time to just connect with each other and share what we're thinking and what's going on.
Excuse me, Max, I'm sorry. I think I'm supposed to be in the in-person group.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Let's see. Caleb, do you have host ability?
I think so. Let me see. All right, that's Charlie that needs to go.
Yes, Charlie, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Okay, that should work. Did that work?
Awesome.
Thank
Okay. So yeah, we can just get the ball rolling. Does anybody have anything that they want to discuss or ask a question about and just bring forward to the group? This is really an open forum. I've also got plenty of topics that I could prime you with, but I didn't want to like start that direction if there were hot topics that were on your mind. So if you have something, let me know. If not, I've got a list. So we can go that direction too. Okay, well, hearing none, the first thing I wanted to do was check in with everyone about mid-action reviews. I know for our returning families, you've already been through the mid and after action review process. Just a real quick vocal overview of what these are. This was inspired by the work that happens that are called after action reviews in the military. Whenever they go through one of their projects, when it's over, they review it through the lens of 4 very intentional questions as a way to debrief what happened and then take out the insights from that to move forward and plan out their next project. So we use those same 4 questions for each of your learners, and they take that as a template to create their mid and after action review. And then they use that to present to you how this whole half of the year has gone for them. And then highlighting from there how that's going to inform what they do with the next half of the year. And then in May, they'll do it all over with the after action review, which will reflect upon their whole year's worth of work. They're really powerful. They're learner led. And then you get a chance to ask them in front of the dream teams and in front of the guide, just those high level metacognitive questions about their growth, development, and where they see themselves building a calling that'll change the world. So I know that some of the mid-action reviews have already started, but particularly for new families as well as returners, if you wanted to share your experience or had feedback you wanted to give about these mid-action reviews, or if you just had questions about, what can I expect? That was the first thing I wanted to touch base on to make sure everybody felt like they knew what they were getting themselves into, because those have started and will continue both this week and next. Sorry, I was on mute. In the chat, what are the 4 questions? What did I set out to do? What did I accomplish? Is there a difference? And then what does this mean for what's next? I didn't get the exact wording, but that's the basic thrust. So also just to give you all a little more of the arc of development, these are the two high level reflection points, but we do have sort of a mini action review at the end of every session, which is their parent conferences with you. And those are supposed to be just updating about that session. Then at the end of each half of the year, that's when they do the review for the whole half of the year. So just to give you all kind of that arc, we have the mini ones each session, and then the larger ones are the mid and after action review. And that's sort of the container for their continuous reflection upon their progress.
Hi, man. Oops, sorry.
Oh, you can go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm Annie's mom. Annie did her mid-action review yesterday. She was the very first one in the high school studio. And it was her very first one. And it was very interesting because the things that she chose to talk about weren't necessarily the things that I would have chosen to talk about. And that was kind of interesting to see a different point of view, and maybe just a tad frustrating as well, just because our brains apparently think a little bit differently. So it was very interesting, but also helpful because now I know what to kind of look out at, and coach and whatever needs to make those two roads meet maybe a little bit at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say that having the dream team participating, that does give an interesting, different perspective of having when your learner is talking to other people besides their parents. And so unlike the individual, like, ones after each session, it does give you sort of a different view of like what they're thinking. And I think because it's more important to them sort of how they outwardly project themselves. And so it gives you a bit of an insight into, who do they see themselves, and who are they becoming, and how they're sort of toying with that image to others, I think.
See, Max, Aaron has a comment in the comment box about kind of prompting deeper thought on the mid-action review question. So I don't know if you have a response there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So it says it's difficult. It seems like Sawyer's having a difficult time grasping the concept of evaluating himself and asking these questions in an objective way. Any suggestions of other questions to ask to prompt those deeper thoughts? I love that. So sometimes a learner could feel like a paralysis around their metacognition when the questions seem so formal and like they need to be presented formally. So I think approaching it from more of a conversational position could help get at the same types of insights that they should use for the mid-action review. So even just pointing out, great, like what you just said here while we were eating dinner, that's your mid-action review, So I would take that more conversational approach and maybe just ask, hey, this session, your quest was on, well, actually this session was mid-action review, but last session, or you could do story arts, this session, your story arts is on memoirs. What has been your favorite challenge so far? And then, he'll think about the different memoir challenges that he's done, and he'll say, well, I really like this one. Why? What did he like about it? What stuck out to you? Or even you could say, hey, Sawyer, like what have been the quests you've done? You've had 3. What are they? Which one was your favorite? Why? Which one pushed you the most? That's another good question. Which one was hardest? which one was uncomfortable. That one can get some really good metacognition. Which one was difficult? A lot of times that learning edge really gets them there.
Yeah, I think that's great, Max. So I have experience guiding at the in-person before school, and we would do mid-action reviews every year. And part of it too is those kind of guiding questions are helpful. So I think like what Max is kind of pointing at is like, what was your favorite or what was most interesting, but also asking learners, what's your best piece of writing you've done? How do you know? Like, why do you think that? So getting them to show you their work they're proud of, but then asking like, what is their criteria for evaluation? Because I think you're right, Aaron. Like they're not going to have pre-programs like how do I evaluate myself? That's not going to come. But through drawing it out through conversation and asking them, like, what are you showing me? Why do you think, like, what in this are you proud of? What do you think is good about it? What could you do better next time? Like those kinds of questions are really kind of prop that metacognitive process, and gets them thinking through like, oh, okay, yeah, like I actually am making some progress, or I could actually make even more progress on this or that.
And even if they're hesitant to put a stake in the ground that like, yes, I think this one is the best work that I've ever done, having them just compare two pieces of work, and maybe they find this piece was stronger in my writing, but this piece was more creative. So which one's better, I'm not sure, but just even having that activity of comparing the two and identifying the nuance, that is a great thinking routine that they could even just share that same complexity with in a mid-action review. It doesn't have to be a singular work that they've selected. We've got about 5 more minutes, and I really want to take advantage of the fact that we have so many parents here together. So if there are any just like problems of practice that you are feeling as a parent, or any things that have come up to you and you'd like to share with the group, I'd love to pivot to any experiences you're having on the parent side of things.
Hi, Max. Joanna here, Alim's mom. Hello, everyone. Well, for me, it's been an uphill climb for Alim as well. It seems like the work is never ending. It's too much. And considering that he's coming from mainstream education, adjusting has been very hard, but I can say that session 4, he's becoming good at it. I'm really proud of the strides he has made. He's able to do some work independently. He's more confident. He's enjoying his SLE classes, which were, he was always like lost, not knowing what to do or what the peers are doing, but he's getting a grasp of it. So what I realized as a parent is it's a learning curve. You let them struggle, in the deep end until they figure it out and learn to swim to the shore. It's painful to watch. You just want to jump in and kind of help, but restraint is very important. So I'm just really glad that he's experiencing this at a young age, and I know that by the time he gets older, he'll have built that muscle of basically what we're all about: self-directed learning and discipline, and being your own hero, the way that Fresco likes to put it. So I'm just really glad. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. It's also great to see that we do have, we were able to do this at a time where our families in Africa can join us. We got Angela, Joanna, Celestine. So it's so cool to see our international community. And we're hoping to keep growing, to keep building out as an international school. So I talked to a family a couple of weeks ago in Australia who's also wanting to be a part of this. The biggest challenge there is that they are literally 12-hour difference. So it is night and day. but we're exploring this stuff, and we're really looking to continue growing and building out in Africa, in Asia, in Australia, if we can figure the time difference. So it's great to see that we found a time that we can get these continents together for us to connect.
Joanna, thank you for sharing that. I wanted to share something that I'll just briefly show this image on the screen. We show this often with our learners, called the learning pit. I don't know if you've seen this before, but your story's common. It's common with with all of our heroes that are coming into a self-directed space. This idea of, like they might start eager, like, oh yeah, I want to guide my own learning. That sounds awesome. I can set my own schedule. I can do it. Oh, okay. Like maybe I don't know how to do this, right? I don't have all of the info. And then the space here, like when they're at the bottom of the pit, the sometimes as teachers, the temptation is to, like, bend down, rescue them out. But really, like, that's where the learning happens, right? And when they climb back, like when they start like building the muscles to climb and the strategies to climb out of it, that's where the learning truly happens, is climbing out of the pit and withstanding the journey. But this is it's a common story. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you for that. I took a screenshot of that. Very illustrative. Thank you for sharing.
Caleb, and along those lines, I just wanted to add that it's our first year as well, and I've been trying to learn more about the Socratic method, and in doing some research, I came across something that I wanted to share with you and read with you, because I thought it was a free-for-all discussion and unstructured, but it seems to be more structured than I thought it. Let me read a paragraph of an excerpt from an article that I found that says, any discussion, any thinking guided by Socratic questioning is structured. The discussion, the thinking is structured to take students through students' thought from the unclear to the clear, from the unreasoned to the reasoned, from the implicit to the explicit, from the unexamined to the examined, from the inconsistent to the consistent, and from the unarticulated to the articulated. And to learn how to participate in it, one has to learn how to listen carefully to what others say, look for reasons and evidence, recognize and reflect upon assumptions, discover implications and consequences, seek examples, analogies, and objections, discover, in short, what is really known, and distinguish it from what is merely believed. So, to me, that was great. It was a clear definition of what is to be expected here, and just hoping that the guides at each level are capable of doing that.
Thanks, Alfredo. Yeah, that's really great. We call it the Socratic method. After Socrates, who used questions, but he used questions for a purpose, right? There was an intention to the way he was using his questions to guide towards clarity. It wasn't a unstructured free for all. But thank you for sharing that. And then Celestine, we have like 1 minute left. I see your hand up, and I want to make sure that you're able to speak. But go ahead.
I just want to give a brief comment, which is a sentence, and that is to encourage Joanna just to keep at it. It's not very easy, especially for the children from Africa, but with time they get to understand and they get to adjust. My children have really benefited from the teaching methodology of the Forest School Online, and I've found out that they've become more confident and also critical thinkers in terms of questioning any decision that they're making, but questioning it in a positive manner. Thanks. I hope I'm done in my minute. I was speaking very fast.
Well, since she left like 20 seconds, I'm going to go. What I'm learning is that I need to answer those 4 questions. What did I set out to do? Get rid of some words that are in my vocabulary when it comes to education, like behind, like what is being behind, and I think that's something that I keep saying, like, oh my gosh, is she going to be behind? She needs this peer approval. She doesn't have it. She has like 20 assignments without peer approval. What are we doing? we're not gonna ever catch up, you know? And then I'm like, what does that even mean? What does catch up mean? And then last night, my third grader and Alfredo, a third grader, were on the phone last night. It must have been 9:30 Santino's time. And they're like, we're gonna get this badge. We're gonna get it, you know? And they're working on their mid-action review, and I hear Santino asking her, what are you doing? What is that slide? What does it even mean? And she's like, I don't know, you know, but I'm nowhere in the room. And I was thinking like, perhaps this is the success. It's not the, you know, did they get all of their stuff reviewed, or it's them being self-directed, you know, on a call together, working together, trying to reach another level, and willing to do it at a random hour, you know, when school is clearly not in session. So anyways, I just wanted to share that.
Well, I think that's an awesome note to end on. So thank you, Christy Joy, for you know, bringing that that anecdote. That made my day. So yes, let's keep the collaboration going. And please, y'all know how to reach me. If you have any other ideas for ways to connect, I'm definitely open, and we want to finish strong and then start off strong in January. I'll also follow up with the parent copies for the rest of the year so that you can have those on your calendar, and make sure to join us for our next one in January. All right. Have a great one, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.